Hi, everybody. This is Chandra with the Artist Spotlight for November. And today I have Misty Coss. And we're going to just be talking about art and kind of having her give us a little bit of her backstory and getting some awesome, some little tidbits and some tips for any artists that are starting out or are at a point of having some struggles. And hopefully we can help you along the way. Hi, Misty.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. So we were talking November, and November's here. Cannot believe it's already November.
Oh, I know.
It makes us all kind of just sit and be like chill for a minute. Like it makes us do that. Like there's so much stuff going on that we just kind of have to sit down and see where we're at and kind of look for the next year and where what we did and what we can do better for next year or keep doing that awesome stuff. So
Mhm.
um, how have you been? I haven't talked to you in a while. How's everything going? Last time we talked, you were coming out of working for somebody
Mhm.
else pretty much as your full-time
Mhm.
job, and you were going to be doing the solo thing. How's everything been going?
Pretty good. Very busy. Now I'm trying to figure out a balance between all of the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
um, I'm currently still teaching for Studio 23.
Okay.
We're developing some exciting new things for January there that's going to be coming out soon. I'm also doing some event planning with 989 Concierge, as
Nice.
well as I do graphic design work contractually through her too. So
Awesome. So,
got a lot of things going
yeah,
on.
so everybody, I'm located in Michigan. Misty is are you born and raised in Bay City?
Yep, born and raised in Bay City. Yep.
Okay, so we're coming from Bay City.
Mhm.
And so how long have you been doing the art thing? How long have you been an artist and how long have you been doing it on your own?
Professionally, I've been doing it since maybe 2010.
Okay.
But art, I've been doing my whole life. I was always using different materials to create different kinds of little sculptures when I was little. Making things out of milk jugs or like old earrings. I decorated an old lampshade with all these old vintage earrings. And I just always have loved to draw. I had a lot of influential art teachers, especially in elementary school. My third and fifth grade teacher was an artist, and she sold her artwork at Studio 23. So she like really influenced me to uh, to create art and to love art, and it kind of stuck with me throughout the years and kind of snowballed into what I'm doing today.
Okay, great. So so you were talking about more like balance. I feel like all of us kind of deal with that. Are there like any tips that you are trying to work through or anything that you have found have worked or haven't worked in regards to trying to be self-employed and doing your own thing?
Well, first off, always have a good schedule planner. Uh,
Mm.
I have a physical planner, and I also have one in my phone. I use the Google Planner
Mhm.
and or Google Calendar, excuse me,
Right,
and I have it in both of those. So in case one fails, I have a backup system.
right. That's a good
And
idea.
yeah, and it's always good to put everything in there just to make sure that you're balanced out correctly and you're not overscheduling things. It's also very important to say no. Don't be afraid to say no because you don't want to overwork yourself because you're no good if you're overworked sick and you don't want to do it anymore.
Right. It's
Yep.
not fun anymore when you get to that point.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Have you found that anything that hasn't worked for you?
Um,
There's so many things out there that was like, oh, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. Is there something that you have found just does not work?
so far I'm trying to do the blogging thing. For me, that doesn't work so much.
Okay.
Not yet anyway, but it may take maybe up to a year for that to get rolling to create traffic into my website. So
Okay.
it might be a little bit too early to see if
Okay.
that works for me just
Yeah.
yet.
So I always talk to, I have a couple different people that I've talked to, and I know you, but people don't. Do you have a degree in art?
I
Or are you
have
pretty much self-taught, or are you both, or?
a little bit of both. So I have, I started out being self-taught. I have an AFA in art and design.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a mixed degree, associate's degree from Delta College. And then I have a graphic design degree, a bachelor's degree from SVSU with a minor in art. I'm very close to having a bachelor's degree in art, but I decided not to finish that one. I was actually told that if I had a degree in art, I wouldn't get a job in art, but
Okay.
I got a job in art and I have a graphic design job. So it's a little
Yeah.
mix of both. Yeah.
Right. So that was like my next question. So we have a lot of people that just kind of um feel that way, feel like, oh, I have to go. Like I've met so many young people even this past year where they're just like, people are telling me, I have to choose something, or, I really want this, but like I don't know how to get there. And most of them are artists or are creative kids or young adults that just really have no idea on what to do. So like if I was an artist coming to you and I say, hey, I'm really creative, people telling me that I'm really good, um, do you feel personally that the degree helped you get where you are, or do you think that the hustle is going to get them where they are?
I think it depends on the person. So for me, I needed to go to college because I did not have art from middle school to high school. So I did not get that formal training because I had to
Okay.
choose band, choir, or art. And I
Okay.
chose band, and it was a really big, important part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But then I lost out on that art. So I had to
Okay.
go to college or take classes to get to where I am now.
Okay.
But for other people who have that cemented foundation of art, you don't necessarily need to go to school. And if you're motivated enough, like I know quite a few artists who have never been to school and are
Right.
amazing.
Right.
You just need to make sure that you are getting out and networking and getting in touch with the people out in the artist community. Because if you're not doing that, then you're just going to be a good artist in your own home and not anywhere else.
Right, right. I totally agree on that. So when you talk about networking and getting out, what are some things that have really helped you um, doing the networking thing, and what hasn't really helped you?
Well, getting out and going to maybe like an artist reception or going out to galleries and meeting the different people that they're out in the community is very important. Even just knowing fellow artists and talking to them and having friends who are artists can open up a tremendous amount of doors for you. Um, I know a lot of people just from all my classes that were like, hey, there's this show, your artwork's perfect for it, you should sign up for it. And then that's how I got through that.
Okay.
Things that don't really work, I don't know, those are all different for everybody. So far, maybe doing videos for me might not work to get my artwork out there or help me socially.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that could be something that's not working right now, but might work in the long run. It's always things come to you at different points in time or
Mm-hmm.
or help you to be successful at different points. So
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. Like we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, and just building on the strengths first is probably
mhm.
like a really good idea. And then, just because also like you're not good at it right now doesn't mean you can't come back to it and give it a try later. Or while you're networking, maybe you find somebody that's really good at doing the videos, and then they can either give you some tips, or maybe they can just like do it for you, and then you both kind of work and make some money that way.
Mhm.
um, that's a really really good one. So we're going to go back, we're going to start talking about niche. So like I know when I first met you, that was like one thing that you were kind of trying to figure out, like what your niche is and what that looks like for you. um, have you kind of got a little bit of clarity on where that is for Misty, or you still
Uh,
kind of feel like it's kind of still going?
It's still going. I think it's, I've learned how to do so many things that I find different niches. Like I don't know how to, I can do something that's sofa art, or I can do fine art, and I can also, do a still life painting. I know a lot about graphics, photography. It's hard to pare those things down when you have a lot of different areas of interest, but also I'm very useful. So it makes me a good teacher because I know a lot about different things, and I can help other people find different styles, not necessarily for myself, but for other people.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think that's always like a work in progress. I think the niche is just like, I know that when I had Joshua on, he was talking about, how he thought it was this, and then he changed it to this, and now he's more looking at portraits and doing the quick portraits on the street, and then he really enjoys that. So it's like, it's just, I think, something to, when you feel comfortable with it and it's working and it seems to be bringing in some income, I think then that's something you can take from that and say, oh, well, that really worked out really well. And that one didn't work out the best. Maybe I shouldn't do so much of that. But having it in your back pocket is also good because you could probably bring it out later in the future and maybe do better with it, or, show somebody else, like you said, like teach it.
Yep.
So yeah, arriving at that is just pretty much always a struggle, I think, like even with all creative people, like finding their niche and finding the right customer, because that's what people are always like right now, that's what the whole big thing is. Even though it is like for me and my business, like it's really important to know like who your customer is, just so that you're not creating a whole bunch of stuff and, like you said, then all of a sudden you're just an artist in your living room and with a bunch of paintings that aren't moving, right? So but you like them, so but your living room and your family just pretty much like them, and that's about it. So I think that that's a really good way to just kind of try it out, right? Like try out what works, and then kind of make a list of what doesn't work, and then you can come back to it later, like you said about the blogging, figuring out who your customers are who's gonna follow you through it and then buy, right? Because they like you and they like what you have going on. So along with the journey that you've had since, you said 2010, right? 2010. What do you feel are like your biggest accomplishment?
Oh boy.
The big question.
My biggest accomplishments, I would think, was actually, being able to teach out in the art world. That's an amazing opportunity to actually be able to have a job in the art industry without being, doing it. I am doing it on my own. I'm a contract worker, but still having a place where I'm based out of. Not a lot of people get to do that. I have a really good art family. I'm surrounded by wonderful people. And, I think it's really important to be able to have that bunch of good people surrounding you too, to help you make you successful. Another accomplishment would be this last year, I made it a goal to, really put my artwork out there and get into some shows. And I think I was in something like 6 this year. I have one that's still pending, so I got to find out in December if I made it into that one or not. But I just made it a goal, and I was like, listen, if I'm going to be an artist, I have to put my stuff out there.
Right.
And I did it, and I was able to do it. So I'm really proud of myself for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know there was that's like one thing that, people just, I feel like sometimes we think that, as soon as that happens that, things are just gonna, start opening up. Do you feel like there was like a time when you maybe put yourself out there and you just felt like it didn't work, but like how you felt and how you pushed through that? Like even maybe if you put yourself in like galleries or shows or whatever and it just didn't work out, how did you bring yourself back into it and say, to yourself, Misty, you got to keep going?
Well, there's a lot of artists in the world, and I look at it as if I enter a show, there's 200 people also entering that show. Do I think I'm the best artist? No. Might they be the best artist? No. But it's not about whether you're the best artist or not. It's whether or not that person who's drawing it or is on that board likes that art.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily that you're a bad artist or you did something wrong. It's just that's what they chose that time. Just move on, do your research. When you look at a show, you say, do they choose similar artwork to mine? What do they like? Am I appropriate for this show? Just do
Mm-hmm.
your homework. I tend to look for a lot of free shows or not underpriced, but low price shows, just to start of a building block. And then, once you can create that balance, then you can start going for the more expensive shows. And really, it does feel awful getting rejected. But
Right.
you know what? For every one that you're rejected, you also get into one.
Right.
I know an artist friend who said, I'm going to enter 100 shows today. And for every, one that I get rejected, I'm getting into another one. So it's not, you can't take it personally.
Right.
There's so many different types of art out there, and there's so many different kinds of people who enjoy art. You're not always going to be their cup of tea. You might not always win a prize or make it into a show, and that's just the way it is. You got to remember that it's I don't want to say competition, but just let it roll off your shoulders. It's not necessarily you.
Right. Right. And art is so personal that
Mm-hmm.
it's hard, to put that to take that, and it's kind of like you have to have a business brain, really, because you have to separate it between, this is my work, yes, it's personal, but I have to keep going, it's a sale, right? Like, you have to
Yeah.
turn everything into a sale and understand you're going to get a no, and just kind of count, like, okay, I got 4 no's, there's going to be a yes coming, or I'm going to get that award, or um and so when you're talking about the shows, are there like criterias that artists that are starting out, is that how the shows work, that you have to kind of go along their criterias, or on
They're
pieces?
they're all different. So
Okay.
some shows, will mandatory. It'll be you have to frame the artwork.
Okay.
Some shows they're only a specific dimension. Some shows you can't use anything that's a thick frame. You
Okay.
can't use matted pieces. It can't be jacqueline. It's just you just have to read through all the rules, and it sometimes can be very confusing, but that's what Google is for. And that's why
Right.
it's very important to have friends who are artists too,
Hmm.
because then you can say, hey, have you entered a show like this before? And they can tell you.
Hmm.
There are some free postcard exhibits that you have to actually mail your postcard that you've designed through the mail as is. It has to be mailable to them. So
Okay. Nice.
it's kind of crazy and fun all at the same time.
Hmm.
It is always very important to make sure that you're creating work that is I don't want to say it's quality. So make sure that all your sides are painted, make sure it's wired up and ready to go. um, Make sure it's not rickety. You want to make sure that you're giving them the best quality product that you can, because you're going to get rejected. I've seen so many people bring in matted photography that's beautiful, but
Hmm.
you're cutting it and it's cut ragged, or it's falling out of the frame. You cut the mat crooked. That's really not going to get accepted if you're not bringing in the high quality work. So always make sure that you don't have pieces of glitter in it or anything like that. You always have to make sure that it's quality.
And I think that comes back to also focus, like focusing on making that your goal. If that's what you're working on the shows, you're working on putting your work in the galleries or whatever that looks like. You just have to kind of keep that focus until you're done, and not try to do everything, because sometimes that's when we get sloppy and you make
Yep.
those silly mistakes that you're like, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. How did, and we all kind of go through that, but the focus of taking one thing at a time, instead of, because that's like so easy for all of us to do, like, oh, well, I can do this and this and this and take all this stuff on, and you were really excited and really wanted the show to be your primary goal, and you blew it because you weren't. So, but that's a lesson that we all have to come to, but it's also a good point of taking the focus and making sure that that's your focus until that's finished, because you will get that no if you're going to be careless like that.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice to an artist that's just starting out in regards to making money? There's so many options out there. There's so many things that you can do. You can do online. You can do, the art events, do some, art fairs, things like that. Is there anything that you would suggest somebody would possibly start with in the
I
beginning,
would
getting
say
themselves out there?
I would say the most important thing is taking good photographs of your work so that you have to show if you need to send it off anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly is to research whatever it is that you do. If you are an illustrator of like a specific type of anime or, pet portraits or whatever it is that you do, research how people are selling these things and is what's most successful for them.
Mm-hmm.
Even, expand to, okay, do these pet portraits. Around this time, pet ornaments are huge. So if you can paint somebody's pet on an ornament, right, you're going to make a lot of money doing that, because people love those personalized things that they can give as gifts. It's very important because necessarily, if you live in Bay City, Michigan, you're not going to be selling a whole lot of ocean art,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you have to research where, if I paint seashells or whatever it is I am, where is that popular and how can I market it to those people? Because you're not going to be successful if you're trying to sell. Well, maybe I can't say you won't be, but most likely you're not going to be successful, selling tropical themed things in Bay City, Michigan,
Yeah. So you're talking more of like if you're at like markets or if you're at bazaars or craft shows, things of that nature, right?
Right. Oh, and I love doing markets. Never be afraid to do a market. I know sometimes artists are like, well, I'm a little bit too good for that. Don't ever be too good for stuff. Try something out. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. I enjoy doing markets. I'm friendly. I like to talk to people. So those things are really fun for me. I did the Humane Society. They have a market. I love animals. So like, first off, that was like really exciting for me anyway.
Right.
But look at it, you say, is my type of art that kind of art for that thing? Then if it isn't, don't go to it. But there's like a really beautiful gypsy art market that happens. I think it's like in Clio once a year. If you do beautiful, colorful paintings of fairies or flowers or whatever, that would be perfect for that. Just do your research. There's probably something for you in that respect, At least try it once.
And like you said, the one thing that I was thinking about, because I went to 2 weeks ago, I went to 3 bazaars and art shows. And I mean, and these were huge, people throughout. And like you said, talking to people, saying hi, maybe kind of seeing what they're looking for, if there's something specific they're looking for. I walked through a huge one and hardly anybody, they just like they're just sitting there, like, and it's about like, you're an artist, like you have to somehow get that person to be like, oh, you want to interact with me, you're selling your stuff, like you can't just sit there and think it's gonna, sometimes it may sell, itself or whatever, but honestly for me, art is very personal, and I would love to, even if I'm not going to pick your piece, or buy your project or your wonderful, like there was a guy doing, I think, like the images on wood, and I didn't buy anything, but he came right up to me, started talking to me, and I'm going to remember him now, because if I ever want something like that, that's going to be the guy that comes to mind. So definitely, like you said, getting out there and talking with the customer is so important.
Yep. And if you don't know, if you are not outgoing, if you're an introvert, have a friend who's outgoing with you, because you can make the art and you can have somebody market it for you if you aren't comfortable talking to people. or can't talk to people.
Right.
Luckily, I was in theater a lot, so I'm kind of like an extroverted introvert. So
Yeah.
I can be talkative and I can, communicate with people and chat up a storm when I'm at, booths and things like that. But if you can't find a friend who is and who's really good at that,
Right.
it's okay to get help if you need it. If you
Yeah.
can't market, if you can't speak for yourself, find somebody who can. And that way you can still be successful. There's always a way. You just have to be flexible and put yourself out there and not be afraid to, I don't want to say compromise, but be more flexible. Just being flexible can make you more successful.
Yes, it can. I totally, totally agree with that. So I always get asked this question in regards to platforms. I know that
Mm-hmm.
you and I know that you have a couple ways of selling online.
Mm-hmm.
What are some platforms that you can suggest to other artists that are just starting out?
Okay. Well, my first one I started off was Etsy. I've moved away from Etsy now just because things have changed. They want you to do free shipping. That's not really possible with large pieces in art. Right now, I found that if you increase the price and say free shipping, it doesn't work for me, but that's for me and not for other people. Another great resource if you're a graphic designer or illustrator, Creative Market. They are very inexpensive. They're actually free to post any of your designs to sell. And then they take a small portion of it at the end. And I've been really successful on that. It's great income for doing very little. You just post it. You don't have to advertise it. And people find, if you're doing you do an illustration or you do a photograph, if you're a photographer, that's great in just passive income to get. There's other sites, I can't recall any right now, but you can do it through Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Stock also sells things like that. You can look into that. You can just Google it and you can get like top 100 sites that you can sell your artwork on. Right now I have my own site, which is mistycossart.com through Wix. Wix is a great site if you want to be able to put multiple things on there. I chose Wix because I can do a blog. I can put information about myself. I have my shop on there. I have a lot of information on that site. I like Wix. It's pretty inexpensive compared to other places, and it's pretty easy to use. It's gotten a lot easier to use in the past few years, and it actually looks pretty good. Other things that work for me, Facebook. Personally, I tend to sell to a lot of people I know. Through the groups don't work like they used to anymore. I actually tend to sell more from my main page than my group.
Okay. Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I thank you so much, Misty, for all of your information. It was nice to see you and chat with you. And so I'm going to have everything on the newsletter on how to contact you. I'll also put it in the credits when we go live with the video. And so everybody will be able to see you there. And I hope you end this year out awesomely. And sounds like next year's sounding really great. And thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me and letting everybody know all of your tips and where your journey is leading you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
You have a wonderful day and happy creating, everybody.